I'd have to say what I really enjoy about Happy State Bank is the morale that we have. Part of that goes back to the ownership that we talked about. Everybody understands as an owner, we're going to think like owners, not like managers, and we truly have each other's back each and every day. So that just the teamwork, everyone works so hard for each other, knowing that the ultimate goal is that each one of our customers is going to leave this bank knowing that we have given them everything we have as bankers to exceed any expectations they had out of our bank.
Let's call this meeting to order, and we'll turn it over to the city manager for the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. If we could, our agenda today is very brief, but we do have two excellent presentations that we need to make to you today. And if we could, let's start with those and maybe ask Mr. Quant and Mr. Mulberg to come up representing the Amarillo Convention and District Council. They're here today to give you just kind of a status report of activities, things that are going on, things that will be changing, some very positive news. Of course, I think everybody on the commission had a chance to meet Dan, but Dan is very new to us and I think has hit the ground running on our behalf.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I get a little nervous when he says it's an excellent presentation before I say anything. You know, it's like getting the applause before things start. But it's probably a better idea that way. I need to start first by just saying I couldn't be happier to be here. Today is actually my 3-month anniversary.
Congratulations.
So assuming I get through probation by the end of the day, which is of course up to Gary, you know, I hope to be here for many, many years, but it just happens that this is the 3 months. And I'm not just saying that because I'm supposed to, or I'm literally paid now to say that. I truly, you know, love it here. I had a lot of people when I got here that said, "Okay, you came from South Padre Island. Are you nuts?" And yeah, I'm nuts for Amarillo, basically, is what it is, and this is a lot closer to what I grew up with in North Dakota and Nebraska. I also, before I started this, I want to thank, and the people that are here from the CDC, the Communication Committee, the C&T Committee, the hotel people. Would you just stand up? These people just came because they wanted to be part of this and to show, you know, that they're behind what we're doing, and we can't appreciate, you know, I don't appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate it tremendously. We've done a lot over the last 3 months. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, but tell you that and a couple things we've got coming up. But one of the first things we did was start our weekly newsletter that all of you should be getting. It kind of looks like this. This is the one that came out today, Amarillo. And it is designed primarily for front desks, you know, taxi drivers, waiters, waitresses, anybody. So when somebody turns and says, "What's going on this week in Amarillo?" they can say, "Oh gosh," because this is, you know, they've got this retaining back there. And we have over 300 people now receiving this every Tuesday. If anyone isn't getting it, you know, give me a card and we'll take care of it.
Dan, by the way, checks on whether you open that email or not.
Yes.
And if you don't, he harasses you.
Yeah, we can't do that. So it was amazing the first time we told our committee that we could check to see if they opened it. Our numbers jumped the next day on how many people had looked at it. I don't have examples, by the way, for everything I'm talking about, but our new meetings ads that I think were also sent to you, it's really important for us to have Amarillo stand up. And in the meetings ad market, almost every ad has a picture of empty ballrooms and empty setups on tables, and one ad looks like another. This is totally different, obviously. And we are taking this theme tomorrow to Austin, Southwest Showcase, and moving on this. Moving. Sorry. But we're going to be doing a lot of, thank you, sir. But a lot of themes like that, so we're having fun with that. We had a problem with even the sales software that our people were using, that it couldn't do the right reports, it couldn't keep up, it wasn't doing anything, so we're abandoning it. We're buying new stuff. And by the time we get this thing in, it'll take about 3 months to install, we can give you reports on everything you'd want to know, where the leads are going, what's going on. It's going to be absolutely tremendous. We were glad to coordinate an event by the Texas Lodging Association back in December, talking about especially the issues that are coming up during the legislature. And we had phenomenal. We packed the boardroom at the chamber, so that went very, very well. We've also assisted in the redevelopment, the revitalization of the Amarillo Lodging Association, which just had its first meeting last Thursday. On the 17th, Donna Patel back there is the new chair, and Cashel over here is the vice chair. And we're very excited about the working opportunities with the Hotel Association, doing a lot of things with them. We had over 30 people in attendance at that first meeting, representing over 20 properties. So that was a pretty good start for that. We've also developed a very extensive hotel database to try so we can know everything we can about the hotel. And we sent it out. A lot of the hotels will send it back, but that'll just improve our ability to help sell them. The airport signs that you've heard about for a while are going to be operating on a date coming up very soon. I wish I could tell you the exact date, but it's down to little tweaky software things. But I can pass these around. These are some examples of what will be on there, including, I know one of the favorite examples was this one.
I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. But that will be...
Unless you're complaining.
I don't know.
But the airport sign will be tied into our office, so we can literally, if we know whether it's a convention group coming in and we can type in Welcome Shriners and have it come in or have artwork with it, or if we know there is a major developer prospect coming in, we can work with the EDC or anyone, just say, well, welcome, Joe Smith, or, whatever. So I think that's going to be very exciting for us. We did join with the city in terms of the cell phone ban and letting people know that's on our homepage, on our website. It says the distractions of Amarillo do not include your cell phone, and talks about, because we don't want our visitors getting arrested. So, and I'd love to talk to the police about warning tickets to visitors sometime.
They aren't going to be handcuffing anybody.
We have to make sure they can get at their wallet. So that's important. We've also been working with the Emergency Operations Center and Sonia on crisis management and trying to assist the city, because if you get into a crisis mode, the city has so many things you have to worry about, and one of the things that isn't necessarily top of mind is, what does this mean for people who happen to be at the Civic Center or at our hotels and that? So we've written, Eric Miller basically has written the plan that says this is how we will help the city with this. We're not going to interpret anything that comes out of the city. We will echo the same message, but make sure that gets to our visitors in town. Of course, we've met with a lot of people concerning meetings, sporting events, and attitude. I toured 30 hotels in my first 10 days, and we got more hotel people, and they're just staring in the doorway. I blink. And we also changed this. The we stepped into Amarillo, or step into the real Texas. I mean, it's the phrase. We adjusted it a little bit, put the branding iron, a little smoke, to kind of fire it up a little bit. And we've got that on our ads now. Keep the same theme, but just kind of get it going. You all also got a copy of our marketing plan that's being reviewed right now by the Convention Visitor Council, Breaking New Trails, and it not only has a lot of verbiage, but it has an action plan that ties in with it. So it doesn't just say, isn't this a great idea, but it says this is who's responsible and this is when we're going to get it done. So it's all about planning and getting some of those things done. We've also identified a little over 35 niche markets for Amarillo. So we can go through and specifically say, not only are we going, obviously we'll invite anybody here. We love them all, but we've got some things down to model airplane competitions. And how do we tie in Tradewinds Airport to doing some things like that, or fly-ins, for example, things along those lines. We've got, I'm also proud to tell you, from what I understand, there's not been one meeting of any committee in the last 3 months that's been canceled due to lack of quorum. Okay. Everyone's there, everyone's involved, and very excited. I'm very excited about it. Some of the upcoming things, you may have already seen some of these things. This was in the paper yesterday, also with the Route 66, or Route 66, depending on how you want to pronounce it, conventions. I know I want to say route, but my old English teacher says that should be route in terms of routing the conventions. But anyway, Route 66 conventions to Amarillo and telling locals to get involved. And since we released this last week, we've had, 15 or 20 leads already from people on trying to get involved. And that's the idea, get local people involved in bringing conventions to Amarillo. We have a new leisure campaign we're working on. I don't have the exact thing. I've got some more copy that just came today, or more graphics. But again, it's going to stand out. We're going to stand out and be different from what you see in other places. We're reviewing all of the current media placement proposals to make sure we're in the right places. We're reviewing all of the funding guidelines and probably going to tweak those a bit. So I want to make sure that we're just not a bank, and that's not against any bankers, because actually it's for bankers, because bankers always want their money back, and they want something back. And a lot of what we've done in the past hasn't required anything back, outside of just thank you. And we want data back. We want databases back. We want some other things so we can continue to build on the investment we're making in these things. We're going to be working one of our next big projects with the lodging properties, attractions, amusement parks, everything on packaging what we have here, kind of turning Amarillo into a cruise line. And that does not mean discounts. That means value. Because people will pay for value. That doesn't mean you've got to discount what you're doing. So we're going to work on that. We're going to develop an Amarillo sports directory and try to find every darn sports organization there is in this town, and that's down to, and I'm including like hobby, like chess events, this and that, every dart league, every soccer league, all of that. So we have that, which will be a great asset for new residents who can see, in addition to where do I hook up my gas and electricity, where can I go because my kid is in karate. But at the same time, it gives us a great database to work on facilities, and then we want to create a facilities guide, too, that's going to be a little unique and not just like everybody else's. We've got some ideas on that as well. We're developing, in addition to marketing plans, specific public relations plans for the year. So we will know it is April, and so this is exactly what we're doing in April, plus whatever comes up. Same with social media. It's not enough to be on Facebook and use Twitter and those, but how do we use them, why do we use them, and what is our message going to be on Thursday? That's all going to be part of that plan. We're also developing an RFP for an advertising conversion study. We spend a lot of money on advertising, but are they coming? Or are they just, is this working? And so we've got to be able to study that. Otherwise it's kind of worthless. And then we're also going to be doing our new kind of gatherings for the town called What's on Tap. And they will be at the end of the day. Which is why the logo is kind of like that. Our first one's going to be with Stephanie and the Venom at the beginning of the football season, but we're going to host these different places around town and just talk about this is what's going on right now, and this is how you can get involved with everything that we're doing, and just be part of this. I guess that's one of our big messages, is we want people involved with what we're doing. This is one of those great times when every person in this city, including every member of the city commission, can be involved in economic development by telling us, I belong to this group, and I travel there all the time, or I'm sending employees to these kind of things all the time. We can host those things back here in Amarillo. Just contact us, and we can help you research that and do that. We're big on planning. As the old saying says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. We want to define the roads and get there at the same time. So there's a lot going on, and I know I've been rattling fast, and I apologize for that. I know it didn't necessarily flow, but that just keeps you awake. So you're trying to figure out what was that, and then where is he now? But the idea is that we're active, and we've got a very, I think, enthusiastic committees and boards, and especially an enthusiastic staff. And like I said, as long as he doesn't get rid of me by 5 o'clock, I'll be back here quite often to kind of update you on what's going on. Do you have any questions at all? Or?
Well, I'm very exhausted after all that. It takes a lot to get me exhausted. I do have a question. Are you including as part of your information to everyone our wonderful arts community, the museum, the symphony, the opera, and all that? Because I think that is really quality of life issue, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and we, and I think that's part of what has been missing from what people know about Amarillo coming in here. I've been in the Texas tourism industry for 14 years, and I was amazed at how much I didn't know about Amarillo when I got in here, and I think that the arts offerings are among that. And we've got to share And we're proud, as you are proud of the Western heritage, but we also have to expand that and say, there's a lot more here. And we tell that story.
I commend you.
Thank you.
All that you've done in 90 days.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that.
If I could say, Mayor, I'm obviously very excited to work with Dan, and we're so excited he's here. And one of the things I'm especially excited about, and I'll turn it to Donna and just say a few words, because Donna runs some properties here in Amarillo. And Donna, why don't you just, in a capsule, say what this meant to you, reestablishing the Lodging Association and the relationship with the CBC. So if you would, Donna.
Absolutely. Thank you. I do want to compliment you all, I think, and Dan, because for the longest time, I've been in Amarillo for the past 17 years, and we have multiple properties with multiple flags. And, in the past, we had a really good group of CBs, and we did good things, and then it just kind of went for a slide, it's just like everybody got complacent. And, the hotel itself, all the hoteliers lost interest in, it just sort of went really south from here. And we just kept hoping and wondering that things would change and turn around, but eventually it did. Well, thank the Lord it did. And once Dan came on board, I could see it was just so evident right away that we had just made the right choice. And he literally has rejuvenated the entire industry, as far as hotels go, tourism goes, and even us as operators, he's excited us to want to bring more people into the Amarillo area. So, and then also our association has died out just as much as the CBB did because, people just lost interest. And we'd have meeting after meeting, and we'd have 10 and then 9, 8, 7, and then one day we just had one person show up and that was me. So I approached Dan, as he came, and I said to him, I really would like the opportunity to revive our association because I think it's a wonderful partnership. You cannot operate one without the other. We've all got to be on the same page or we don't accomplish anything. And all the hoteliers all need to be working together rather than against each other. And the only way we can do that is having a strong association and an affiliation with the CBD. So Dan helped me last week, and the Ambassador Hotel, which Dan, the owner, was very nice and hosted the meeting and the luncheon as well. And as Dan said, we had a lot of people show up for the first meeting, which was really good. We had some really good things come out of that. And I guess I just accidentally got elected president. But I was honored, and I hope to do, very, very good job and keep in touch with Dan and the whole CBB group and just really rejuvenate our industry, which I think has really taken a toll for the last, and the economy was bad anyway, but we took a bigger toll because of the lack of communication and a representation from a hotel association as a body rather than just one person going to the CBD. So I'm so excited, and I think, Dan, I just cannot compliment you enough for your energy that you bring into our association and the help that you've given me and all the other hoteliers. And I have prayed, and I know I have the answer that we are going to come back stronger, better, and hit the ground running this year. And things are going to be really great for the hotel and the city as well. Thank you.
Very good. And I should tell you, when you talk about communication, to me, one of the most important avenues is communication between our office and you. Okay, and all of the city departments, but especially the city commission, because I know this isn't my money. And it's not even Gary's money.
Sorry, Gary.
Gary, did you hear that?
It's your money. I mean, taxpayers. It's the taxpayers' money.
Right.
And of course, these are a different group of taxpayers that are paying it. But it's still tax money, and this group has the ultimate responsibility on that. So anytime, call me, email me, send up smoke signals, anything. If you've got an issue, a question, somebody asks you something, I'm very glad that Ellen's part of our CVC and can share that with you. But anytime, any place, just let us know, because if you don't understand what we're doing and don't, I'm not saying you don't love every ad we do, but if you are confused by it, I would much rather have you call me and say, Dan, okay, you got me messed up now, than stuff behind the scenes. I want open, honest dialogue, and I promise that to you.
There's all new energy on that CDC board. tell you. And the first week or two you were here, I ran into you and I said, "What are you doing?" You said, "Going from hotel to hotel." Yeah. I said, "Well, that's good."
Yeah, I did everything but make beds, I think.
Looks like you've had results with that too. So.
Yeah, it's been good, yeah, and I'm very,
Gary, in
very
hindsight, it's a
excited.
shame that Dan wasn't here before Bill Ware passed away.
Ain't that the
Because,
truth?
I mean, that would, the two of them could really run together.
He did.
I know.
So again, and we will be in here every quarter, not in the board if you want it, but we'll be here every quarter to give you an update on what's going on. And I'll talk slower.
No.
Now, we hope you have enough that you don't have time to talk slow. Keep after it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for being here today. That's very good.
Thank you.
Very important.
Good to see you. All right. See you, Sherman. Good for you. Good. Take care.
I will do that.
I don't know what they did.
There's plenty of chairs now.
It's gonna around 99. Mayor, we'll move to the next one. Mr. Frigo.
Now, why would you put the accountants right after all that?
Why don't these people leave?
This was good stuff. Audit presentation.
Well, at least we won't be asleep, will we?
Well, you know how a good album has enough song on it.
I got you.
Wow, everybody.
Everyone, Janie Arnold is a partner at CMMS, and she was the partner.
We lost control, so we're just as upbeat as Dan's presentation.
He's a hard act to follow.
Yeah, she is the partner in charge of the city audit, and Corey, also with the firm, was on the city audit.
Corey Joyner is our senior manager for the city's audit. For
Thank
some
y'all
of you
for
did
being
meet
here.
him, and but if you haven't, I'd like for you to have an opportunity to meet Corey.
And I think Janie has tabbed the audit for you, and she wants to go through some of these items with you.
Yes.
Okay.
You should each have 3 documents in front of you. You should have a comprehensive annual report. You should have a single audit and then our required communication. And we're going to start with comprehensive annual report. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for having us here to go over the audit results with you. I appreciate that. And then I'd also like to thank everybody here at the city who assisted us with the audit. And there were a great many that did, and we appreciate your help. And
Yeah,
so,
Michelle Bonner and Laura
Yes.
Hastings did a great piece of that.
and Curtis.
I'm sorry,
There
Mr.
it is.
Berger. Yeah, you hit.
But overall, the audit went very well, and we do appreciate everyone's help with the audit. As I said, we're going to start with the CAFR, and the audit presentation is going to focus on significant events and transactions that happened during the year. And I've tabbed it accordingly. If you have any questions, please stop me, ask your question. We'll try and answer your question. If you'll first turn to tab 1, and on the flip side, I would like to acknowledge the City of Amarillo Finance and Accounting Department. They received a Certificate of Achievement in Excellence in Financial Reporting for last year's CAFR. And I'd like to commend them because that takes a great deal of effort to achieve this award.
And that's how many
Congratulations.
consecutive ones, Steve?
Since 57.
Wow. Good job.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I mean, that equals 56. Oh, okay. You knew that
57 plus 56 is 2013.
So congratulations. If you'll now turn to tab 2. Tab 2 is our independent auditor's report, and it covers a page and a half. So I'm going to kind of walk you through it a little bit. The first paragraph says, we have audited the accompanying financial statements of the governmental activities, the business type activities, the component units, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining information of the City of Amarillo for the year ended September 30, 2012. And that's the basic financial statements. The city is responsible for preparing the financial statements, and they do. Our responsibility is to express an opinion based on our audits.
The second paragraph basically tells you the auditing standards on which we conduct our audit. And the third paragraph on this page is the most important paragraph. This is our opinion paragraph. And it basically says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the city as of September 30th, 2012, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's an unqualified opinion. That is a clean opinion. That's what you want to have. So that's the most important paragraph. The other information is the second the paragraph right below that. It tells you there's another report out there that you need to be aware of and that you need to read in conjunction with this. And the last two paragraphs of our report talks about the other information that is contained in the CAPR. You have an introduction section, you have the MD&A, you have the basic financial statements and statements, you have required supplemental information, you have supplemental information, you have statistical information. And this walks through and tells you a little bit about the assurance that we provide on this information. Example, in the back is the statistical information. This is unaudited, so there is no assurance on that. But it is information that is gathered from many different sources, census data, economic data, and so each page is marked unaudited, and we tell you in those paragraphs, specifically this information is unaudited. So, and it covers about 10 years of information, and like I said, since it comes from outside sources, we do not audit those outside sources. So that's basically what our independent auditor's report tells you on a page and a half of information. In case you're wondering, I usually just focus on the third paragraph, but in case you're wondering, what is all the other verbiage in that report? And that's basically what it is. If you will now turn to page 3, or tab 3. Tab 3 is Management's Discussion and Analysis. This is prepared and provided by management. We review it for consistency with the audit results. And it also focuses on significant transactions that have happened during the year. And so I recommend that you read it, but I am going to focus on a few of the bullets right now, and we're going to discuss them further in detail when we get to the tab. The second bullet, the city's total net assets increased by $11.2 million. Another good year for the city. And so at tab 4, we're going to go into more detail on that. The bullet next to the bottom of the page tells you that the general fund, the sales tax revenue this year was another record year, exceeding $48 million. And we're going to cover that at tab 6. But anyway, that's a significant transaction for the year. And the last tab, the last bullet on that page talks about last year the city issued debt, $16.3 million, in order to acquire additional water rights. And during the year, the city purchased almost 35,000 acres of water rights at Oglesby, Roberts, and Lipscomb counties. So that's a significant event that happened. Turn the page. The two bullets on that page, this year the City Commission approved the creation of the Drainage Utility Fund. And the significance of this is that this year you only have a little over $46,000 in expense. Next year you're going to see quite a bit more activity. Assessments began October 1st. So this year not a lot going on except basically the startup, but it is a new fund. And then subsequent to the year end, on that last bullet,
Wait a second, Jay.
Yes, right ahead.
But this drainage utility fund, if you can answer this question as our auditor,
okay,
or even as an accountant, knowing you of all people outside of our staff in this commission, knowing how we operate, how conservative we are, how limited the funds are, and our limited sources of income, what is your opinion of the action that we took to establish this drainage utility?
Well, I think it is a good action. You have a fund set up, you have assessments that will start. You can track all the transactions that have happened in this fund. It's set up to improve the drainage improvements. And I think it captures it it has it in its own set of financial statements. Next year you'll have your balance sheet, your income statement. And it'll allow you, just for that fund. In fact, there's a tab set up, not a tab, but actually the city's tab, I should say. There's actually right here, the start of it. And it's going to keep track from year to year where you're at on this, on the drainage improvements, and allow you to account for that separately and know exactly where you're at. So I think it's actually a good decision. Okay. And then the last bullet on page 5, or 6, pardon me, subsequent to year end, the city issued 2 debt. two debt issues. One, the $6.2 million is for the drainage improvements on Farmers Avenue, and the second one was $2.79 million to acquire rolling stock for the city's garage, municipal garage. So, like I said, those are some significant transactions. We're going to cover some of those in more detail, but I did want to highlight those. If you will now turn to tab 4. Tab 4 on page 25 is the City of Amarillo Statement of Net Assets. And if you look up here, you'll see the primary government. Is everybody there yet before I get started? On page 25. If you look up here, the primary government. The primary government is comprised of the governmental activities, which is your general fund, capital projects, and your special revenue fund, converted to full accrual accounting. The other piece of this is your business type activity. This is your water, sewer, airport, and utility funds. And those two combined give you the primary government in this total column. Alongside that is your component units. But we will focus primarily on the primary government in our audit presentation today. We have separate audits for the component units, even though they are included here. If you'll come down about halfway down the page, you'll see total assets for the year ended up being $1.2 billion. That's an increase over last year of about $49 million. The largest asset, if you look at your assets, your largest assets are coming from your capital assets. They comprise 79% of your total assets. Before accumulated depreciation, that's $1.4 billion in cost. After accumulated depreciation, that leaves you with about $953 million in assets. And so the remaining 21% of your assets then come from up above, up here on your investments. You have $136 million. And then you have cash and unrestricted cash. You have receivables and a little bit of inventory also. But the largest asset is your capital assets. Coming on down the page, about three quarters down, you will see the primary government's total liabilities were $432 million, coming down that total column across. And what comprises your liabilities, you have $285 million in debt issues. And what I'd like for you to do, I don't have this tab, but if you will turn to page 75 in your footnotes. I'll wait for everybody to get there. You'll turn to page 75. Starting on page 75, there is a detailed listing, the GO debt, the special assessment debt, and then turning the page, you've got your water and sewer bond, then you have your airport bond, and you'll see that the total debt issued by the City of Amarillo is $190 million. And the city also participates with Crimwall in their debt issue, and that's $94.8 million for a total of $285 million in debt. And I think
excuse me,
right
on the Crimwall portion of this, is that our part?
Yes. Yes.
Our 40%?
Yes. Yes, that is your portion of the debt. And so that gives you $285 million of debt. And I like the table below that. This is your debt service requirement over the life of the debt. It takes you out to 2037. And it takes you out by type of debt, both the principal and interest. And it gives you a grand total of your debt service requirement over here in this total column for both principal and interest. And I think that's important information to know. Anyway, if you will, any questions?
Those debts, though, Jerry, most of those are tied to revenue streams that don't affect our property tax or ad valorem tax, correct?
That's
There's only $30 million or so that affects.
Around 27 is property tax support.
Well, didn't we add $3 million with the latest?
That's not going to be property tax.
Okay, good.
Your series.
It's got a property tax pledge, but it won't be supported.
Good.
Your series 2007 and your series 2001 are your two tax-supported issues.
Well, there's another little bitty one, $1.3 million or $1.2 million.
Isn't the old one the library?
Yeah, right there. It's the first three.
Where are you at, Jerry? What page?
On page 75, the first three are tax-supported.
As an auditor, does that make a difference to you? Do you look at when you have a dedicated fund to pay back the debt?
It does, because you want to make sure that you have revenues to support that debt. If we were looking at the debt service requirements, You want to see the ability of the city to be able to repay that debt. And there's another tab for the end of the audit presentation where we look at the coverage ratios, where you're at on some of your significant debt. The most significant portion of debt, of course, is in your water and sewer funds. So,
About 26.9.
Which ones are you at now?
Those first three, that library bond was refinanced, that's why it shows 09. So you got $4.13 million in your general obligation series 2009 on the principal column. $21.6 million out of the series 2007. The one I always forget, the 1.29, the Build America bonds, which was part of the funding for the bridge project.
But out of our total debt, that's really the only part that's tied to our property tax.
Yes.
Obligated property.
That we levy a tax on.
Yeah. Okay. I want to point that out because the other number is so close to what Lovett's is, and Lovett's is all tied to property tax.
She said make a demonstration on it.
Yeah. Thank you.
okay, if you'll now turn back to tab 4, page 25.
Well, can we go back to 4 and just to emphasize
Oh, yes. Yes.
the assets that, go ahead, debt?
Tab 4?
Yeah, go back to, you'll go back because I need to cover the other pieces of your liability, the other significant pieces of liability. We'll turn back to tab 4. As I said, debt is $285 million of that $432 million. Okay? The other significant components of your liabilities, you have accounts payable of $22 million at your end. And then you also have self-insurance reserves of $15.6 million. You have compensated absences of $19.9 million. You have landfill closure and post-closure costs of $2.1 million. And then you have other post-employment benefit costs, OPEB, of $74.5 million. That's another significant liability that we're going to cover in a little bit more detail. And then you have your net pension obligation of $5.5 million. And so back on, so that kind of covers the significant components of your liability. And so at the end of the day, you have your total assets less your liabilities, and that leaves you with total net assets for the year of $779 million. And the largest component of that, of your net assets, is, of course, your investment in capital assets net of related debt at $696 million. Other components of debt, you have restrictions for debt service, and you have restrictions for other purposes such as your grants. And that leaves unrestricted of $71 million. Now, I would like to point out that of that $71 million, the city has commitments that are in process and outstanding at September 30th, back on page 67 of approximately $63.9 million. And I'm going to show you that table in a minute when we get there, because that's an important thing to remember, that you do have commitments that are outstanding that are not necessarily reported on your net asset statement as of today, because they're future commitments that you have agreed to. So anyway, if you'll any questions on the statement of net assets before we turn the page? Okay. If you'll turn the page, the next page is your statement of activity, and this is basically an income statement in a different format. It starts off with your expenses. If everybody's here, so start over here at this far column right here, your expenses, and it breaks it down between your governmental activities, your business type activities, and your component units. Your total expenses for governmental activities was $189 million. The program revenues used to cover these expenditures was $43 million in charges for services, $19 in operating grants, and $12.6 million in capital grants. Now, if you come over here to this column, you can see that leaves expenses exceeding revenues of $113 million. But you have other governmental revenues to try and cover that. And so come on down the page. You come on down the page down here under governmental revenues. This is where all your property taxes, sales taxes, and everything come into play in your investment earnings. And you had governmental revenues of $107 million. And that resulted in a net decrease in your net assets in the governmental activities of $6.4 million. Now, if you remember, I mentioned at the very beginning in the MD&A, the city's net assets increased $11.2 million. Okay, come straight across there, and you'll see $17.6 million. That is the net increase in your business type activities, and those two added together will give you your $11.2 million in this far column. Your increase. And before I move on, I do want to cover the business type activities. So your business type activities, your expenses is $78 million. You had charges for services of $78 million, and capital grants of $7.8. So that coming across gave you that your revenues exceeding expenditures of $17.8 million. So anyway, that is the combined net increase in the primary government's net assets. Any questions before I move forward? Okay. If you'll just turn to the next page. The next page is your governmental fund, and this is your general fund, your capital project fund, and your other governmental activities. And really, the only thing I'm going to focus on here is your fund balances, because it's important to have a healthy fund balance. But then you also have to know what's been assigned and unassigned. So if you come down, your general fund had $46 million in fund balance. Of that, $44 million is in unassigned. Now, the city does have a 90-day reserve policy, and so, which I'm sure you're all aware of. The capital projects fund had a $37 million fund balance, of which $33 million of that, I don't know if you see those numbers, are assigned for capital projects, which is part of that commitments table that we'll take you to when we get back there. And then your other governmental funds had a $16 million fund balance, leaving a total fund balance of $100 million, a little over $100 million. So, any questions before we proceed forward? Well,
now, in the budget process, anything over the 90 days in fund balance will appropriate as a transfer to capital projects, and then you appropriate the various capital projects from there. So we true it up in the budget.
There you go. They're all trued up once a year.
okay. Well, let's then proceed to tab 5. We're in the footnotes right now, and your footnotes are very similar to last year. Last year we had a gas implementation of gas C-54. This year there were no significant gases that were implemented this year. So your footnotes are very similar. However, I do want to point out some significant footnotes I think each of you should be aware of and where they're at. We're going to focus on page 63 on retirement benefits. And if you look in the middle of the page, right here in this table right here, you have two retirement plans, the TMRS plan and the fireman's plan. And if you look, you'll see right here it says unfunded actual accrued liability. You have $19.9 million for TMRS, and the fireman's is $33 million. And if you look right below that, you'll see the funded ratio in that next table right below it. TRMS is 94% funded, and the fireman's fund is 78% funded. Now, I would like to say that firefighters did increase their contributions by 2% this year. So.
A rule of thumb, you really want to set 80% as kind of your minimum funding, and the firefighter pension fund dropped below that, and we talked to the firefighters about it, and they voted in 2 1% increases, and that should get that funding ratio to up some.
Over a 2-year period.
It'll do one in January. They already did that one, and one this October of 13th.
This year.
Yes.
So 80% is the threshold.
It's a good target. Anything above 80 is considered you're well funded.
Okay. Any questions before we proceed on? You'll turn to the next page. Note 9 is your post-employment benefit, OPEB. And I'd like to show you at the bottom of the page, you'll see the unfunded actual accrued liability is $267 million. This is a significant liability, and I just think it's important to go over it. If you come over to the next page, you'll see there's an annual OPEB cost of $21.9 million. The city is on a pay-as-you-go basis, so the contributions that were made was $4.3 million, and that left an increase in in your OPEB obligation of $17.6 million this year. As you can see, last year your liability was $56 million. This year it's $74 million. So it's growing.
You said $17.6 million?
Right there. It's the $21 million. Then the pay-as-you-go reduces that down to $17 million. And I'll show you back in a tab a little bit later the impact that's having on the funds. And if you look down below, you can see the funded ratio is 0. But I would like to say that the city has taken action to try and address this. This month, a trust was created in order to start funding this, which is a great first step. Plus, ideally, under GASB 45, the employee's benefit liability would be fully funded when they terminated. So anyway, the city has initiated steps to start addressing this liability. And if you'll turn, do you have any questions on OPEB before we move forward? If you'll turn the next page, on page 67.
Yeah. Would the new GASB put this, it'll put the pension liability on the balance sheet, but does it put the
I
OPEB?
think does it put OPEB on there too? I think it's
I
talking
didn't need to go
about.
back and look at that.
Okay.
It could be. I'm not
Under
sure.
the new GASB pronouncement on pension plans, eventually our unfunded liability for both firefighters and TMRS will be as a long-term liability on the balance sheet. It won't be stuck just in the footnotes.
But the plan is that you will have dropped that liability considerably.
The changes you guys made to TMRS
Yeah.
really cut that liability.
Okay.
And the same pending changes will do that to the LPEP side.
And we will then be far ahead of most other cities in Texas.
Yes.
We won't have that looming over our heads.
That's right. Does this include the hospital district, that hiccup?
Separate.
It's separate.
Oh, the hospital's pension? Yeah, they'll have to go to the same type of accounting. The hospital has an asset on their books because they're trying to fund their pension plan over a shorter period than 30 years, which under current accounting convention gives you an asset, even though they have a large unfunded liability, which makes no sense. But in the new accounting pronouncements, that unfunded liability will go on their balance sheet. Well, in this case, as a liability when we show the whole unfunded amount. But they're making progress on the funding, and they're still funding it over a shorter period than the 30 years required.
As Dean said, in the future, we're looking at GASB 67 and 68, and that will have a significant impact on the look of the economy. So, and that should be effective, I believe, in fiscal year 2015, I believe. So, we'll start seeing those changes. So, anyway, if you will turn the page, on page 67, this is a table that summarizes the commitments that are outstanding at year end. And so I think this is also important to look at in conjunction with your other liabilities to know what you have made commitments to. So, any questions on the footnotes before we proceed forward? If not, let's turn to tab 6. And at tab 6, I want you to look at page 102. This is the city's general fund, budget to actual results. And up here at the top is your budget amount. You'll have your final budget. For revenues, your total revenues were budgeted at $143 million. Your actual ended up coming on over was $146 million. And that gave you a favorable budget variance of a little over $3 million. And as we talked about earlier in the MD&A, if you look up above the second line item, sales tax, you can see that variance, that favorable variance is coming from your sales tax revenue. You had budgeted $46 million, and it has exceeded $58 million. So, and that's another record-setting year. There's a page in the statistical section on page 218 that gives you the past 10 years, and this is the highest year on record, with last year being the second highest year. And that says a lot about Amarillo's economy, considering what's going on nationwide. So, and then if you come on down, you have your total expenditures, and the total expenditures budgeted were $139 million. And through management and control of expenses, total actual came up at $135 million. That gave a favorable variance of 4.8%. And those two amounts combined together gives you a favorable variance of $7.2 million. So,
This is my only green tab on the book. And a green tab is good. Green is good.
Green is good.
And I just want to make sure that the way I read this was correct. That thanks to the managers and Mr. Frigo's and all the departments' aggressive control of expenditures and increased revenues, we have revenues that exceed expenses by over $7 million.
Yes. That's awesome.
Jared, do you have any comment on the charge for services? I know we've done well in some areas, but there we're $342,000 over and up on gross receipts for business taxes. We're over $239. Are you comfortable with that?
The 239 is a negative Right above it, of course, the 259, that's your hot tax increase.
But I'm talking about the negatives. Are you comfortable with those going over as far as they have, those two things? They're kind of it's almost a miscellaneous where it says charge for services. I don't know what services. Are you comfortable with what those are? Because it's significant. It's a lot of money.
Well, it's significant. It's less than 1% when you.
I understand.
It's a big number, but
Just
the
one
variance rate is pretty tight.
Okay. It's good. It's good.
You see the investment earnings are a hickey also. You just can't plug a low enough number in for that. That's a zero.
Any other questions? If not, we'll proceed to tab 7. Tab 7, the importance of this page is that we don't really talk a lot about. We have the single audit in which we address a lot of your grant revenue. But I do want to point out that this is your grant revenues on this side of the page, and this side of the page is your bonded debt service funds and conflict absence fund. But for grant revenues, I'd like to say it's still a significant source of revenue at $19.6 million. So just pointing that out. And that's really the most significant part of that page. We'll cover single audit in this other report. If you'll now turn to tab 8.
Where was the 19.6?
Oh, it's actually, I have to sum. I summed them.
Sum everything across this page.
Okay.
Yeah, I summed them mechanically because I did want to point out that's still a significant source of revenue for you. You'll turn to tab 8, and this is the internal service fund. And so this is designed to service the departments of the city. And if you look coming down through your municipal garage, your total net assets are $25 million, and then your information services is a positive 5.9, and risk management a little over $4 million. But this is where the OPEB is at. And as you can see, the $74 million in liability causes the employee insurance fund to have a negative net assets of $66 million. And so this is why it is so important that the city has established the trust and decided to go ahead and start funding this, because this is eroding away the net assets of the city, as you can see there. And coming across, here is the $17 million recorded in the employee insurance fund. And just to kind of let you know, since this does not have comparative information, last year it was $13 million. So you can see that is growing at a fairly fast pace. So that's the significant part of the internal service fund. And as I said, the importance of setting up a trust to start funding this. The next tab that I want you to go to is tab 9. And this is the water and sewer fund. And the water and sewer fund had another good year. And you can see the total assets for the water and sewer fund coming down is $610 million. Once more, the largest asset that the water and sewer fund has is your capital assets, and that comprises 84% of your total assets. And coming on down, you can see total liabilities is $254 million, and debt is the largest component of the liabilities at $237 million. That leaves you with net assets of $356 million, of which $306 million is investment in capital assets net of related debt. $5 million for restricted for debt service, and then unrestricted of $45, which you'd want to look back at your commitments table to see that you have $36.4 million in commitments for water and sewer. And then coming across the page, this is your income statement, and your total operating revenue for the year is $69.6 million, and that's up about $537,000 over last year. Your total operating expenses were $47 million, and as you'll note, depreciation at $13 million is your largest component of expenses, and that makes sense when you consider your capital assets are your largest asset. And then coming on down to non-operating revenues and expenses, your expenses exceeded revenues by $6 million, and once more, interest is the largest component of that, and that makes sense since your debt is your largest component of your liabilities. And then coming on down, you have capital contributions of $4 million, and that left you with an increase in net assets of $20 million coming out of water and sewer. Any questions on water and sewer? If not, let's turn to tab 10.
Yeah, and the contributed capital is mainly when we accept a new development and all the infrastructure the developers put into it, we book that as an asset and then show it as contributed capital. We're really not getting a lot of donations here. But
Who sets the value of that?
Generally, they'll tell us the cost they've got in it.
There's contract values that are used to do that.
Okay. If you now turn to tab 10, tab 10 is your airport fund, net assets. And your total assets for the year for the airport fund was $94 million. And once more, capital assets comprise the largest asset at 87%. Your total liabilities coming down the page is $14 million, of which debt is $12.4 million for the airport fund. And that leaves you with total net assets of $80 million. And of course, once more, your most significant component of net asset is your investment in net assets less debt of $69 million. Coming across the page is your income statement. Your total operating revenues are $6.7 million. That's up from $6.2 last year. Your total operating expenses are $10 million, a little over $10 million. And once more, depreciation at 4.5 is the largest component of your expenses. And as we said earlier on water and sewer, as if your capital assets are your largest asset. So that makes sense. Coming on down, you'll see passenger facility charge revenue of $1.6 million, and that's used to service debt. And if you come on down, you'll see that your total increase in net assets is $1.3 million.
I have a quick question. I understand the value of depreciation in private enterprise and with the business. I don't understand the value of charging depreciation in a government entity like this. Is it just helping to keep track of how much ongoing capital you need? What is the purpose of that?
Now, it's in the government.
Yes to that, but there's more.
The water, sewer, airport, and drainage utility funds are operated exactly as a proprietary, a business type enterprise. So that is why you don't see depreciation in your general fund or any of that. But you will see it here. And so that's money that is expended up front, and you're booking an asset. And this allows you, as you use that asset, to recognize the related expense associated with that.
And the depreciated value.
Yes, and very good point.
Remaining, which goes to what you're mentioning.
But there's not any tax-related benefit.
No, just to add, your assets are generating revenue in these cases. So that's why you're trying to match the cost of depreciation of those assets against the revenue stream.
So that's where you set up the rental charges to different departments for vehicles and other assets.
That's correct. Which is actually the depreciated cost of that vehicle is how that rental rate is calculated.
It helps you track it like a business would. But, okay, good question.
Or the simple minded, kind of like a savings account to help you pay for replacement.
In the case of the garage, because it's funded depreciation.
NIT.
And NIT.
And we don't have to issue debt the next time.
Ideally.
Unless we add to the fleet.
Thank you.
Now, your governmental
under
funds. Now, your governmental funds, like the general fund, whenever you purchase capital expenditures, you're expensing that on your monthly meetings. And so there is a difference in, before it's converted to full accrual up on the statement of net assets, when you look at your monthly reports, your capital expenditures are being expended. And so it is a little bit different handling. I know that's kind of off your question, but you see that immediate expenditure coming out because you're looking at a current resource. You're taking up that position, and you're seeing it go out, and you're looking at it immediately. But when we go to net assets, we take those governmental funds, and we convert those to full accrual and present those back up on page 25 when we bring on your capital. We pull those out of your expenditures and bring on your capital assets and then show related depreciation at that point. It gets a little bit, but anyway.
Maybe technical.
In and out.
It's a little bit technical.
I don't bore you with the details, okay?
It's what?
You remember her.
Okay. Now, the last tab, any questions on airport fund before we... I would like to turn to tab 11.
We have assets.
Tab 11, I think this is an important page to look at. This is the water and sewer system, and it shows you the net revenue to service your debt. And you have a coverage of just a little over 3. So I think that's good information to have.
Yeah, that's good. Historical data history.
Any questions on the capper before we move on to the single audit? Okay.
Any questions to wrap that one up?
We might have next.
And please, if ever you do have questions even after the meeting, please feel free to contact me. Okay, if you'll now turn to the single audit report, page 1.
We have Jamie autograph you.
Yeah. This is our report on internal control of financial reporting. This report is covering the internal controls of your capital. And when we come out to audit the city of Amarillo, we consider the city's internal controls, not to express an opinion on internal controls, but to consider it in our audit planning. And during that process, if we come across any deficiencies in internal control of financial reporting, we're required to communicate that to you. And I would like to point out in that very last sentence of that third paragraph, it says, identify any deficiency in internal control over financial reporting that we consider to be material weaknesses as previously defined. There were none. And accordingly, there were no compliance matters either that we were required to report to you. So the next report is our independent audit report on compliance with requirements to have a direct and material effect on each of your major programs and on internal control over compliance and the schedule of expenditures of federal awards in accordance with OMBA 133. And that's a mouthful. Basically, this is your single audit report. And so when we come out here through various things, we select certain programs to test. The city has over $26 million in federal expenditures this year. And we selected 6 programs, and those are listed on page 10. And those programs have expenditures of over $15 million. And that gave us coverage of about 58.9%. So during that kind of gives you an idea, a little context of the volume that we're looking at. Okay. And so in this report, we test for compliance and internal control on compliance. And in this third paragraph, it states, in our opinion, the city complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements referred to above that had a direct and material effect on each of its major programs for the year ended September 30, 2012. However, we did note instances of noncompliance with those requirements that we're required to report to you, and it's finding number 1 and number 2. And those are on page 11. And those same 2 findings are also considered internal control findings. So if we'll now turn to page 11. On page 11, it starts with finding 2012-01, and this has to do with reporting. And there were 2 separate reporting findings that we had. We had one in which CDBG had failed to upload the subrecipient reports into the system. And then we had one in which the ARA JAG grant, there was an error in the grant year-to-date column, which then also impacted a couple of other quarterly reports that were filed. And so anyway, if you turn the page, the city's corrective action plan at the top of page 12, they've drafted a plan in order to address this and to ensure that to try to keep it from happening again and to correct it. The next finding has to do with subrecipient monitoring. And in the CDBG file, they have subrecipients, and we pulled the files on subrecipients, but the files were lacking documentation where we could verify that site reviews were being done. And so one of the files did have a site visit, but without the documentation, we cannot say that happened. And the other part of it is sometimes your subrecipients will have audits, and then you must follow up if they have any audit findings. There wasn't any documentation showing that they followed up on this. And then the city has their corrective action plan at the bottom of the page on how to address this going forward. Any questions on the findings? The next page is your last year's findings, and it gives you the current year status of each. And then on page 15 is just a duplication, it's your corrective action plan again. It's just a copy of what we just talked about. It's identical to the corrective action plan that we talked to you earlier. And then the next page, we also, in addition to your single audit, we also have an independent audit report on compliance with requirements applicable to the capital facility charge program, the internal control over compliance. And we look at compliance and internal control here too. And if you will note that third paragraph of compliance, we state that in our opinion, the city complied in all material respects with the requirements referred to above that are applicable to the passenger facility charge program for the year ended September 30th, 2012. There were no findings to the early part of the report. That completes a single audit report. And then at the end of the audit, I have certain required communications that I'm required to communicate to you, those who are in charge of government. So if you'll pull this letter. In this letter, we state there were no new gas fees that were implemented this year. Your most significant accounting estimates have to do with your self-insurance costs, your OPEB, and your monitoring your domestic water wells. The city hires actuaries to calculate the reserves and estimates, and we evaluate the key factors that are used in the actual report and determine that it is reasonable in relation to the financial statements. So, and then it also asked, were there any difficulties encountered performing the audit? There were none. Any corrected or uncorrected misstatements? I don't know if you remember, but last year there was a past audit adjustment for $49,000. And I don't know if you remember, but an invoice came into the accounting department on December 22nd after the close of the year that actually belonged to 2011. So this is the flip side of it. This is the flip side. We have an expenditure in 2012 that belonged in the prior year. And at the end of the day, due to timing, your net assets are correct. So it does eventually time out. And so the next question is, were there any disagreements with management? There was none. Management's representations, we do require certain representations from management, and we did receive that letter. And then, were there any consultations with other accountants? None that we are aware of. Were there any other audit findings that were required to report to you? There are none. That concludes. Any questions? Then pending your approval of the report today, we will.
How long does it take you to do this audit?
We
start tomorrow.
It's a very large audit. We have over 2,000 hours in the audit. It's a very large audit. We start in the summer doing interim work on your grant. And we're out here most of the month of July. And then we're here back in August doing some more interim work. Then we come back and we start field work at the 1st of November. And we pull out right before Christmas. And then we're busy with the city through the month of January, finalizing and working on the report. So, and that, in conjunction with that, we also have audits of the component units going on also. So, Curtis?
They're here to audit all entities. They're here auditing AEDC, HLC, everybody that hospital district, every entity that we touch, they're involved in. And like I say, they do a great job. Their staff very professional.
CBC's audited
good relationship
through the chamber, so it is another independent audit. Okay. Submitted back to us.
And so, but anyway, so we're out here quite a lot. It's a rather large audit, and so. But thankfully, as I said, we have a lot of assistance with the audit. The city prepared, everything is well prepared and ready to go when we get here. And they prepare their own financial statements. This is the city's financial statements. And they do a very good job of having all this pulled together. And they're very conscientious and want to put out a report that is correct. And so we appreciate that. We appreciate your integrity.
We were just kidding about this report not being as much fun as the other.
It wasn't as much fun, but it was as fast moving as it
was.
Thank you.
Very well done. And we have to split the work up internally, and Laura Hastings does a whole lot of the work, Michelle does a lot of the work, and Curtis does a lot of work, and every once in a while I do some.
It looks like a lot of work.
Yeah.
And Jamie, may I ask you a question, or two questions?
Yes.
And you said it, but I want you to respond still to my personal question, and that is, did you receive full and unfettered cooperation from our staff? Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to say, not this year, but in years past, they have self-reported findings to us, and I appreciate that. That says a lot about their integrity. Because, you know, we audit on a test basis. We're not auditing every transaction. It's possible that we've missed something. And so they self-reported a finding that we had to list in the report. You know, that says a lot about the integrity of the management here.
There's not going to be a king for the day question.
I'm so expectant. If you were king for the day.
He usually.
No,
that's budget. That's
The second part of the question is, did anything to you smell funny or cause any suspicion on your part, not reportably, not to the level that needed to be reported, but that you were uncomfortable with?
No. Because we would be required to report that to you. And no, the answer is no. To our knowledge, no. And as I said, you know, we audit on a test basis, but we're not auditing every transaction. But what we did audit, no, there was nothing that...
But because we, the five of us, in essence, you know, our heinies are on the line.
Absolutely.
And we handle this city handles a lot of money, both in cash and in collections and in expenditures. And so, you know, I personally am very sensitive to it.
Absolutely, and you should be, because you have a responsibility to be that. And I appreciate your questions. I appreciate your direct question. You know, there's a lot to be said for that too.
Well, in commendation of the audit department, the finance department, for as many grants, federal grants and state grants, as they get to not have any omissions or have mistakes. It's just astounding because we know that they have to do a lot of reporting for any of those federal and state funds, and for them not to make any more mistakes than they make is just incredible.
It's huge.
And they do a very good job. Now that's, you know, and keep in mind, you know, there's various agency audits that, you know, take place, and that could always result in something. If they were to test something separate, there could, you know, something could come of that. You know, we're, as I mentioned, and I always emphasize this, we're sampling and testing, and what we have sampled and tested, nothing has come to our attention. And so, but yes, they do handle a lot of federal expenditures, and there is a lot of significant requirements that go along, a lot of strings attached to all that money. You know, all the ARA funds created a significant amount of additional work for the transparency that came with that. You know, you didn't increase your staff; they just took on that responsibility, and so there's a lot, you know, a lot of additional responsibilities that came with that.
How do you decide what you're going to sample?
It's through random selection. We'll select. It's haphazard. It's not systematic. It's haphazard. Sometimes, if there's significant transactions, we'll also something that's individually significant. We're going to want to look at, and so we'll look at that. As far as programs that we test, there's very specific requirements that we have to follow in order to select the programs. You may have a program that gets selected every year because of how it falls out. If they had findings in the prior year and they're over a certain dollar threshold, they're going to come back up and be audited again. And so a lot of it has to do with the dollar threshold. We look at a major program as anything that's over 3% of total federal expenditures. I believe that's like $788,000. I believe is what that was. And so that's 3% of your federal programs, and that's a major program. So that's considered a significant program. So we've got to assess the risk associated with that. We are allowed to rotate them if they haven't had any significant deficiencies. We're allowed to rotate them out. If they're a major program and they have significant deficiencies, they're going to pop back up and we're going to test them next year. Any other questions?
Thank you very much for helping us.
Thank you.
Well done.
Well, thank you, and thank you for everyone. Like I said, thank you to everyone here at the city. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today to go over this. And then pending your approval, we have, the city has a debt covenant, and we're required to have this within 120 days of Texas Water Development Board. And so pending your approval today, we're going to finalize that, and we'll work on submitting that and meeting that debt requirement.
Good.
Thank you.
I would like to tell you all that my spouse is a CPA in internal audit.
Okay.
And you can imagine how electrifying our dinner conversation can be.
Did she go through the...
I was impressed with the tabs.
Yeah.
I thought I put that.
Get right to it. Jim, you know the food questions you asked?
Okay.
We'll get through that every year.
That called me.
All of us.
Yeah,
we're all.
Yeah, I
want to ask you back up.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Telephone conversation with Friday.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you very much.
Let's jump into today's agenda.
Okay.
And we'll have to move a little bit quickly. I think we can do so. Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the meeting from last week. Didn't see any problems. Good.
Let me ask, learned council.
Thank you.
I will move for approval of those minutes. Is it significant or is it of importance? But I wasn't here. It's hard for me to speak to those minutes.
Actually, it makes no difference because all you're doing is making a motion for an item up for the body to consider.
Okay.
Others who are here may take issue with it, but you're just making a motion.
Okay.
Then you don't vouch for it.
Yes, okay.
Yes, sir. That's why it's possible to make a motion, and then when they take a vote against what you move to approve, because it's just a motion to get it before the body, to tee it up.
Because I thought about that.
Correct you on one deal.
Good question.
Correction off what?
I have a correction to you here in a second. I'll go grab it. Item number 2, first reading of an ordinance changing the zoning of 2 lots out of Airport Boulevard and Tilt Road for the Bell expansion. Mr. Shaw.
This is just some leftover zoning basically from undeveloped land. What we are doing here and what the applicant's requesting to do is just rezone that property where the newest Bell facility is being constructed, and we basically just mirror the same development standards with the plan development. To be honest, I don't know exactly why they did plan development at the very beginning, but since they did, and they've done 2 expansions of that, we just continued the same zoning over with this tract of land, and the development standards are exactly the same standards as what the previous 2 plan developments.
What's that 15 acres on the corner that wasn't developed? What is that zone?
It's zoned agriculture.
Okay, so it's still back. Okay.
It's just a separate lot.
Right. Thank you.
It's owned by AEDC. But it's
no, it's not.
Oh, it's not?
There's 10 owners that were trying to get AEDC to buy it, but they turned out.
No?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they said they owned that whole.
That corner, it's privately owned.
We sent out notices and didn't get any negative response to that. And hopefully we'll have the opportunity to rezone the rest of that property.
Okay, item number 3, changing the zoning of a lot for Galeno and Bell from light commercial to heavy commercial.
This particular tract, although it's in an area that's predominantly zoned light commercial as far as the adjacent properties around it, if you look at the overall zoning pattern north or south of this property along I-27, especially north, the majority is zoned heavy commercial. And to be honest with you, there probably are some uses in here that it probably should be zoned heavy commercial, but given the area's zoning pattern and also given that historically we've encouraged more commercial type uses to be located near these types of thoroughfares. Along with that comes a lot of heavy commercial, light commercial zoning. But planning and zoning commissioners felt that with the existing zoning pattern and with the adjacent land uses that this wouldn't create any negative impacts and might help the property owner be a little bit more flexible in some land uses that could be done there. But really there aren't. There's really not a lot of distinction about what kind of uses you can do in a heavy commercial as opposed to a light commercial zoning district. That may be something that we might look at when we look at any changes to our zoning ordinance and the land uses. But as of right now, there doesn't seem to be any negative impact, and so they recommended approval unanimously. We did send out property owner notices and did not get any negative comments back.
Okay.
Item number 4, ordinance 7390, the vacation of a small piece of a drainage easement that's no longer necessary. I do have for your use a corrected ordinance. In the caption on the one in your packet, it says Potter County, and that's actually in Randall County.
Is that the only difference?
That is the only difference.
So is it Potter County?
No, it says Potter in your packet.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
actually
I
in Randall.
Okay.
So that change is made on this, or you can mark your copy.
Well, that's mine, so do I need to say that?
If you would note that, please.
I'm looking at it.
Very right here to the top in the caption of the ordinance.
Gotcha.
This particular drainage was dedicated a while back, and really the only reason for vacation of this easement is just because they have redesigned the drainage in this area and have since actually submitted a new drainage easement instrument that you'll be considering real soon. And as with these types of easements, or any easement really, there is no fair market value required as they're dedicating the same amount of property that they are vacating here, so no fair market value required.
Hey, Kelly, talk to us about renaming the street.
We don't get a lot of these, but we had a request from a property owner to change the name of Stapleton Street to Protect Drive. Protect Auto. Protect Drive. And basically, the segment of street that we're talking about is about a 500-foot strip of road between that actually tees into, on the east side, the I-27 frontage road, and then on the west side tees into Maverick Drive. And the way the property is platted, out of 5 lots, or out of 6 lots that front the street, only 2 of those lots, I guess it's probably the best way to look at it is on your sketch. There are actually only 2 lots, and if you're looking at your sketch, it's the lots that have the 8 and the 9 on the south side of Stapleton Street. Those are the only 2 lots that actually front only upon Stapleton Street and have been actually assigned addresses. All the rest of those lots have addresses either on Canyon Drive or Maverick Street. The owner of the lot number 9, who also is the owner of Lot 8, but this particular lot, he has a tenant, Protect Auto Body Shop, and they requested to rename the street from Stapleton to Protect Drive, and it's a little odd. We get most street names are something that's a little too similar to something else, or a lot of times we'll get a street renaming request for a particular person, mostly. And so this was a little different, and we certainly didn't have anything similar to that name. And really, given the isolated nature of the street and the 2 lots that front upon it, we didn't see any big red flags about it. We, of course, with any street renaming process, part of that process is you have to submit a petition where you have to have at least 50% of the people who own property adjacent to that street be in agreement with it. This particular street, there are 5 property owners, and 3 of those property owners have said that they don't have any problem with it. So that's the process that we go through. We also send that request out to, through our normal distribution process, we send it to other city departments, which includes the Building Safety Department, which looks at addresses and those kinds of things. Then we send it out to all the local utility companies, and we send it to Fire Randall 911. And Amarillo 911 is one of those entities that we always want to make sure that we make these kinds of changes aware, because they do a lot with street names and addressing and those kind of things because of the emergency response. We didn't receive any negative comments back on this until today. We had an email that we received today from Greg Green. Greg Green. Greg Green, who stated that he was a little bit concerned with this. Number one, because of the nature of the business, it could change, and then they might want to change the street name later on. We did talk with the property owner at first, and basically asked him about that. He said that he understood he couldn't just change the street every time his business changed. But and then 911 was also had some concerns with just setting a precedent of if somebody wanted to rename a street after their business, that gives them a little cause of concern. And those are fair comments.
Well, and think of all of the handout freebie maps that banks and the realtors.
Not just that. Is anybody affected with their letterhead or mailing? And then, of course, if we're going to try and do free advertising for anybody that's got a business on the street, I mean, that's really what we're getting.
And you know, Jim and Tillwood, he's now going to want that to be Sims Drive.
I've already planned.
Well, Little Bridge.
Would you be able to go over the fence then?
Yeah, I make
She could come to me.
Yeah, and how much, $20,000, $30,000 for a street name, everything?
Well,
What's it cost?
Well, first of all,
That's what I wanted. Real and
again, and those are all fair comments, but we do change the names of streets. We've done it before. The applicant has to pay for those changes. As far as the maps, those are pretty much updated on an annual basis or something, because we have additional streets that come online throughout the year. Again, because of the isolated nature of this, you only have 2 lots that have addresses on the street. That's all. And
one of them is Protect, the business Protect.
Right.
Who's the other?
The other one's vacant. And so there is no business. The changing of the name will not affect anybody in a fiscal way as far as having to change letterheads or.
The one who sent you the email today, is he one of those two?
No, it's the 911 district that sent the email today.
Oh, I thought you said
911 district. So that concerns them. And how much do we spend to put new street signs up?
They're required to pay for that.
The applicant will pay for that.
So our response was that valid points. However, in our policy manual, we have a policy that maybe I probably agree that it may be a little too open-ended, and maybe you could tighten that up a little bit. But it basically said, and I'm quoting from it, it says people who may not like the name of their current street name can request to have the name changed. And that's basically what it says. And so they followed that process. And depending on whether you think it's setting a precedent or not.
Well, it's slippery slope.
I'm sorry?
A slippery slope.
Right. And we talked to the property. We talked to the property owner, and he said that he, it's just something that he would like to do. But he doesn't think he would be changing the name, every time that his business changed. But anyway.
Okay, so now wait a minute. Hadn't there been a big discussion about changing that name of the street to MLK?
There has. Well, the big problem with that is what it costs business owners all along there to serve.
They've never been able to get the 50% petition requirement.
Cost the business owner a tremendous amount to change.
I'm surprised that the petition requirement is at 50%. I was recalling it as a higher number, and I know you've looked at it recently. That really sets up the city for a neighborhood feud. If half of the block wants to change it to Smith Drive, and you go through and take the votes and change it, and then the petition comes in, the other 50% wants to make it Jones Drive, you have battling petitions. I was surprised it's not at 70 or 80% requirement.
Well, I think the percentage could be a little higher, but that's actually what happened on, I believe, MLK Boulevard, is that you had one petition wanting to change the name, and then you had another petition wanting to keep it the same. And but again, that street's a much, much longer
Yeah, I understand.
What
Still,
property
most people won't know how
We're
big
we're
that
pushing
street
up on
is.
time. If somebody wanna, I mean, we can be late, but just so you know, it's 3.
Yes.
2 minutes till.
Can we?
See what happens when we get out there.
I don't want to, I'm not in the mood.
They could die for lack of, they could die for lack of it.
Yeah, I'll read it, and if nobody makes a motion, we'll move on.
Cool.
If somebody
Can we
does.
pick a different name?
Might have
I like QHA draw.
Hey,
Well, I mean, it's like Tilt
does
Roller,
this
but
come
Tilt
from a
Roller's
dream, or is it kind of
Just
just?
somebody you know work at
Does
HQH?
it-
Okay, so what about,
Let's-
I need to know what to do on number, well, if there's no motion, then you can do number 6.
Yeah.
Let me pass out our sheets for item
If there
number
is
6.
no motion.
Here again, as we had 2 weeks ago, is just the excerpt from your resolution that has those action items for you to pick. This is on the condemnation.
And
You
this
got
would be
my script?
I.
And I have your script, Mayor.
Oh, good.
And then
Here,
it would
this
be,
is yours.
Here's the mayor's script, and I have multiples of the mayor's script if anybody wants to follow the bouncy ball.
it would be item number
Can we just
I.
wing it on the consent agenda? Are we done here?
We can do it. Consent agenda, that is part and parcel of the ongoing project we have every year to take those old 2s out and replace them with 6s.
And the public hearing is, I looked at this property, I mean, anybody's any questions, but
Mayor, if you're,
Yeah.
this is one home for condemnation.
We're gonna
I would
go out there
advise
and
you
hear
to
about it.
discuss it. Yeah, that's why you're about to conduct a neutral.
we're done with the
hearing on it.
agenda is what I'm getting at.
We are. I would like to come back for a quick closed session if that would fit with everybody's schedule.
Yeah, well, we're going to go back.
Thank you for sharing.
Please, sir.